Joining me now is a man who is in one of the most important races in the country. That's not an exaggeration. I'll explain to you why. It's Mike Siegel. He's running in 10th Congressional District in Texas against a terrible Republican named Mike Mccall. Well, we'll talk about him in a second as well. Mike, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Cenk, it's great to see you. Sorry I can't be there in person, but these are the times we're in. But so glad to be in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the folks at home, look, in the primaries, I said the most important races were Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, and Jessica Cisneros, and Marie Newman. And we won 3 out of 4 of those, so that was great, right? And I'm telling you, in the general election for congressional races, Kara Eastman and Mike Siegel. So there's a lot of wonderful, important candidates that are doing great work. Jamal and Cori and Maria are going to win their race anyway. Those are foregone conclusions. But Kara and Mike are in super tight races that are definitely winnable. There's a couple others too. They've been on the show, but these are the top 2. So, Mike, first let's talk about the district and how close it is right now. How do you know it's close?
Well, I mean, we've been working nonstop for 3.5 years. I came within 4% against a mega millionaire in 2018. We built a grassroots army, and now the polls in the last month show us in a statistical tie with Mccall. And even better than that, the record turnout we have in Texas, which is so amazing. That over 270,000 votes have been cast in my district already, with 4 days of early voting to go, plus election day. Compare that to 307,000 total in 2018. The high watermark was 350,000 in the first Obama election. We might get there by the end of early voting. And what we're finding is that these voters who have already voted are more Democrats than Republican. So we are on the precipice, as you acknowledge, making history, replacing one of the worst Republicans in Congress, one of the wealthiest, most corrupt members of Congress, not just running on a middle of the ground Democratic platform, running on a strong progressive platform. So we're very excited, but we have 8 days of hard work ahead of us.
Yeah, that's why Kara and Mike's wins are so important, because they're actual progressives in purple to red districts. And if you get those wins, it destroys the myth forever that you need to run a corporate Democrat who's Republican light in those districts. They don't win, whereas Mike and Kara have an excellent chance of winning. So I can't emphasize this enough, siegelfortexas.org, and we'll put it down below as a link as well, because we're in the home stretch here. This is when it's the most important. So Mike, let's talk about Mccall, your opponent. So you put up a tweet the other day that I want to show the audience here, and it's got a bunch of logos on it, like almost like a NASCAR driver. And so what are those logos, Mike? And why did you put them next to Mccall?
These are the bribes, Cenk, as you say. I mean, these are the corporate PACs that are funding Mccall. This is a guy that's one of the wealthiest individuals in Congress, worth over $300 million. And he takes 70% of his money from corporate PACs. And so these are the people that tell him, okay, when you're on Homeland Security, we need to fill more beds at those private immigration jails. These are the people that tell him, no, we can't negotiate prescription drug prices downwards because you're taking 200,000 in pharmaceutical dollars. These are the people that I want you to advocate for every single war out there, every weapons program out there, because the military defense complex is funding you. And so we just need to call it out. Michael Mccall does not represent the people. He doesn't meet with the people. He doesn't listen to the people. He hasn't held a town hall in this district in 11 years. And it's because he doesn't care what the people say. And so we're running the exact opposite of his campaign, a broad coalition, from workers to environmentalists, progressives, people of color, seniors, young people. I mean, you name it. We've built this amazing, unstoppable coalition. And over 5,000 people have volunteered for this campaign. We've made millions of phone calls, literally, since COVID started. And if we beat this guy, it's going to be earth-shaking. I mean, he has more invested personally in oil and gas than any member of the House or Senate. And I'm running on the Green New Deal. And if we beat him in Texas, that's just going to give tremendous momentum to this movement.
Yeah, that's 2 for the 1 price of corruption. So he personally profits off of destroying the planet. And he also gets campaign contributions from ExxonMobil and others that basically legally bribe him to be in favor of fossil fuels that are burning down the planet, and in places like Texas, causing you 500-year floods. that are coming every other year. So they should be called 2-year floods now. And so, but I want to talk about one group in particular, the Geo Group. So private prisons get to give money to politicians and have the politicians lock up more Americans and take away their freedom, right or wrong, for profit. And guys like Mccall are allowed to take their money. Do I have that right?
It's so sinister, Cenk. I mean, the idea that Mccall was chairman of the Homeland Security Committee, I mean, the most important member of the House in relation to supervising ICE and Border Patrol and the rest. And he's there taking these bribes and then telling DHS, we need more beds. We need to create more concentration camps for kids at the border. And then you go beyond that, and Trump rolls out the family separation policy. And Mccall, he thinks he's sneaky. He goes on Fox and Friends and says, well, I'm not really comfortable with this policy. This is the guy with the most power in Congress to stop family separation. Of course, he doesn't lift a finger. He doesn't hold an investigation. And now we learn there's 545 kids who have probably been permanently separated from their mothers and fathers. And so this guy, I mean, it's sinister up and down the road, whether it's war policy, immigration policy, pharmaceutical policy. Mccall doesn't care about human beings.
But Mike, you seem to have caught a break in a most ironic place, his greed. It doesn't look like he's putting his own personal wealth, even though he's got $300 million into the race. He's just asking for bribes from Exxon and pharmaceutical companies and private prisons. So do I have that right? He's really not putting his own money in, even though he has all that money?
He married into wealth. So his father-in-law is the owner of what used to be called Clear Channel Media, iHeart Radio or iHeart Media, a billionaire basically. And so Mccall married Mrs. Mays, and I don't think he has access, even though he has that wealth. So here's what he did do. He recently filed a report saying he got $30,000 from his wife, all of his children. I think 5 kids each gave $2,100. His father-in-law. He's had to go begging his family members for change right now because he knows how close we are. So you're right that he's not putting millions in, but he has had to go back to the well at this late stage.
Yeah, but it looks like, okay, I get it. It might not be greed. It's just that daddy-in-law in this case wouldn't give him the money to run. This is so sick. It's like billionaires buy these seats and then they say, well, I'm tired of funding it, so why don't you get ExxonMobil to fund it instead? And this is the state of affairs in this country. But okay, I'm gonna ask the question I ask everybody. So the money that Mccall takes from these groups, is a matter of fact, it's in open secrets, it's public, right? So when you ask the local media to cover that, do they?
No, unfortunately. I mean, there was a big article about this race in the local paper, the Austin Statesman. And the reporter started out by telling us that he was going to look at Mccall's wealth and greed. But he ended up starting out the article attacking me, saying, this Siegel, he wants to be part of the squad. I mean, there's no interest in covering that kind of corruption, unfortunately. And there are some exceptions, but in terms of the mainstream media, the TV stations, they really don't allow us to share that information.
Yeah, no, that's why mainstream media, I think, is an abomination. They just take it for granted that corruption is normal, and that everybody knows about it. No one knows about it because you guys keep it hidden. If people knew that Michael Mccall was taking away people's freedom so that Geo Group could profit off of it, I think they'd be pretty pissed in Texas, where they care a lot about freedom. And so, but if nobody in the media ever tells them, how the hell are they supposed to know? So it's deeply frustrating, the hill that you guys got to climb. Now, having said that, you've climbed it. You're right there. Almost beat him last time. You got him on the ropes this time. So, and you're bold. You're unapologetically progressive. So, of the different progressive issues you care about, do you have a sense of what has resonated best with the voters in your district?
Well, I think big picture progressives actually have the answers to the crises we're facing in this moment. We're in a health pandemic and we're fighting for universal health care, Medicare for all, so that you can't have a barrier to getting a COVID test, so that if you need treatment, you can go to a hospital and not risk bankruptcy because of medical debt. And these ideas, the objections that I heard in the primary, you promoted or covered it, Cenk, these two moderate Democrats who spent $3.5 million trying to take the nomination from me. I mean, the objections I heard to Medicare for All were, oh, well, how do we pay for it? Well, we've seen during this pandemic, they'll prop up the stock market. They'll give hundreds of billions of loans to well-connected businesses. So the money's there. So get rid of that complaint. The other one was, well, I like my private insurance. And then 50 million people had to file for unemployment during this pandemic and lost their health care in the process. And so this is a solution to the crisis we're facing. I think another big one is the Green New Deal. And that hits two major crises at once: massive unemployment and the creeping threat of climate change. And in this Houston region, you hit it. We've had these 500-year floods almost every year, exacerbated by climate change, which is, of course, the bedrock of the local economy. And with a Green New Deal, we're talking about let's create millions of good new jobs, like the original New Deal. Let's combat massive inequality of wealth. Let's combat climate change. Let's confront environmental racism and injustice. And it pieces these things together. And you can go on with voting rights, racial justice and police reform. We're actually speaking to the issues that are front and center for the American people right now. And that's why we need more progressives in Congress.
100% right. Look, both as a progressive and as someone in news, I find your story fascinating, and I'm deeply disturbed that more people in the media don't. I mean, here's a guy who was a teacher and then an advocate for the little guy as a lawyer, and he's a giant killer. He's beaten all these guys that they threw at him in the primaries. And now he's got one of the worst Republicans on the ropes. How is that not an enormously interesting story? So look, there's only about a week left before the election. So siegelfortexas.org. We got the link down below, Mike, and there it is. Really easy to remember if you're watching live. Mike Siegel, 10th District in Texas. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Cenk, for everything you do, and look forward to talking to you after this election.
Can't wait. Two easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.